Hello team, welcome to another ATPGEO Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. This is a US political news update, a sort of breaking news update that has happened over the last 24 hours. Some incredibly revealing messages have been leaked to Politico. I think there's some 29,000 messages, Telegram messages, from young Republicans, a group of young Republicans who have said some pretty inappropriate things, should we say. And I think what I'm going to talk about now in the video is a reflection of this movement. No, it's not a movement. I keep actually distinguishing between the Overton window moving and it just expanding. So the Overton window is this window of things that it's acceptable to talk about and the words that we find acceptable to say in public discourse, or even in private discourse amongst friends. And, there are certain things you just don't say anymore because it's too offensive. That used to be the case, but now it appears that that window of what's acceptable has expanded to cover almost anything these days, whereby there is nothing that is taboo. And when you have people who are supposedly going to be the future of the country speaking in these terms, you have to worry about the future of the country. Mehdi Hasan says of these leaked messages, epithets, or this is a quote, epithets like, and you've got, I'm going to say some words, but not others. I know this might be controversial, but epithets like faggot, retarded, and the N-word appear more than 251 times combined. If you ever had any doubts, says Hassan, that the youth wing of the GOP is fully radicalized and proudly racist these days, then, read this article. Elliot Higgins says, I love Hitler. He doesn't say that. Is a quote. I love Hitler. Leaked messages expose young Republicans' racist chat. So, thousands of leaked messages show leaders of young Republican groups joking about gas chambers, slavery and rape in their private Telegram chat. I should say grape. Inside rising GOP leaders' racist chats obtained by Politico and spanning more than 7 months. Let's have a look at this then. We're going to read some of this article. Leaders of young Republicans groups throughout the country worried that what would happen if their Telegram chat ever got leaked, but they kept typing anyway. They referred to black people as monkeys and the watermelon people, and mused about putting their political opponents in gas chambers. They talked about graping their enemies and driving them to suicide, and lauded Republicans who they believed support slavery. William Hendricks, the Kansas Young Republicans vice chair, used the words N-words, basically variations of a racial slur, more than a dozen times in the chat. Bobby Walker, the vice chair of New York State Young Republicans at the time, referred to grape as epic, quote, epic. Peter Giunta, who at the time was chair of the same organization, wrote in a message sent in June that, quote, everyone who votes no is going to the gas chamber. Giunta was referring to an upcoming vote on whether he should become chair of the Young Republican National Federation, the GOP's 15,000-member political organization for Republicans aged between 80 and 40 years old. Quote, I'm going to create some of the greatest physiological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers, he continued. I'm now going to read you this chat to which two people responded. So he said, this Junta chap said, everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber, and everyone that endorsed but then votes for us is going to the gas chamber. He then gets fire emojis to that, to which BW says, when do we start bullying, dude? AK replies, we have a solid 3 people who can probably have them want to jump. BW replies, if they vote for us, why would they be gassed? AK replies, when do we bring that side out? To which Junta then says, I'm going to create some of the greatest physiological torture methods known to man. We only want true believers. To which JM comes in and says, can we fix the showers? Gas chambers don't fit the Hitler aesthetic. And then you got heart emojis, laugh emojis. AK then says, I'm ready to watch people burn now, to which JM replies, we got to pretend that we like them. Hey, come on in, take a nice shower and relax. Boom, they're dead. Heart emojis from others. So, this is all pretty inappropriate. Is this the sort of thing you can just pass off as art? It's just friends laughing about stuff that's never meant to get out there. But I think this is acceptable conversation, and there's kind of there's truth in these comments. In like, okay, they aren't actually going to create gas chambers to gas the in this case sort of political opposition within the party, within the youth wing of the party. But it's I think reflective. It's indicative of a kind of positioning that they have, a moral positioning that they have. The exchange, the article says later, is part of a trove of Telegram chats obtained by Politico and spanning more than 7 months of messages from young Republican leaders in New York, Kansas, Arizona, and Vermont. The chat offers an unfiltered look at how a new generation of GOP activists talk when they think no one is listening. Since Politico began making inquiries, one member of the group chat is no longer employed at their job and another's job offer has been rescinded. Prominent New York Republicans, including Representative Elise Stefanik and Senate Minority Leader Rob Ortt, have denounced the chat, and festering resentments among young Republicans have now turned into public recriminations, including allegations of character assassination and extortion. The 2,900 pages of chat, so that was at 2,900 pages of chats, shared among a dozen millennial and Gen Z Republicans between early January and mid-August, chronicled their campaign to seize control of the National Young Republicans organization on a hardline pro-Donald Trump platform. Many of the chat members already work inside government or party politics, and one serves as a state senator. Together, the messages reveal a culture where racist, anti-Semitic, and violent rhetoric circulate freely, and where the Trump-era loosening of political norms has made such talk feel less taboo among those positioning themselves as the party's next leaders. That's the idea of the Overton window expanding. This is now normalized. This kind of rhetoric is normalized. And then, you might say, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Oh, this is just... You might excuse it away in whatever hand-waving gesture you might feel appropriate, but this is degrading discourse to the point where it's soon just going to be acceptable in front of children to talk in racist tones, sexist tones, homophobic, overtly offensive manner about any sort of person. And that's just like, where do you go from there? Oh, he doesn't really mean it. Oh, it's not really going to... And then eventually it does turn into that kind of behavior. It does turn into literally doing tangible things against people, against opposition, against people you don't like, against otherized groups. And then you're like, okay, well, that was facilitated by this slippery slope down from accepted norms, from an Overton window that was fine. It was just fine. But now it's been expanded so that everything is acceptable, and eventually tangible activities that are oppressive are acceptable. Together, the messages reveal a culture. Oh, yeah, sorry. Quote, the more the political atmosphere is open and liberating, like it has been with the emergence of Trump and a more right-wing GOP even before him, it opens up young people and older people to telling racist jokes, making racist commentaries in private and public, said Joe Fegan, a Texas A&M sociology professor who has studied racism for the last 60 years. He's also concerned the words would be applied to public policy. Quote, it's chilling, of course, because they will act on these views. I mean, it is really reflective. It's indicative of who these people are. And it's super worrying that they are going to be driving policy in the country. The dynamic of easy racism and casual cruelty played out in often dark, vivid fashion inside the chats, where campaign talk and party gossip blurred into streams of slurs and violent fantasies. The group chat members spoke freely about the pressure to cow to Trump to avoid being called a rhino, Republican in name only. The idea that you're not really a Republican, you call yourself a Republican, you're not really a Republican if you don't do this, you don't say this. It's a bit like the no true Scotsman fantasy. You're not really a Scotsman if you don't eat porridge and toss cabers. Okay, surely you can be no, you can't be. Like, who gets to define who's a Scotsman? Who gets to define who's a Republican? And it seems to be the worst, most extreme types of Republicans say you can't be a Republican unless you do this and this and this, and then you get called a rhino. So it's like these guys saying, well, we're afraid to be anything other than cowing to Trump, because we'll be called rhinos. So the group chat members spoke freely about the pressure to counter Trump to avoid being called a rhino, the love of Nazis within their party's right wing. So they're talking about that in the chats, the love of Nazis, and the president's alleged work to suppress documents related to wealthy financier Jeffrey Epstein's child sex crimes. Quote, Trump's too busy burning the Epstein files, Alex Dwyer, the chair of the Kansas Young Republicans, wrote in one instance. So on and so forth. Lots more in here, lots of infighting, people apologising but saying that it might be doctored, but I don't think that's at all likely the case. The article continues somewhat later to say mixed into formal conversations about whipping votes, a social media strategy and logistics, the members of the chat slung around an array of slurs which Politico is republishing to show how they spoke. Epithets like, and as I mentioned before, faggot, retarded, the M-word, appeared more than 251 times. In one instance, Walker, so one of these chaps who at the time was a staffer for Ort, who's a aforementioned Republican in New York, I believe, talked about how a mutual friend of some in the chat dated this very obese Indian woman for a period of time. Giunta responded that the woman was not Indian, she just didn't bathe often. Samuel Douglas, a state senator from northern Vermont and the head of the state's Young Republicans, replied to Giunta. So there you have a state senator saying she's not Indian, she just didn't bathe very often. In a separate conversation, Giunta shared that his flight to Charleston, South Carolina, landed safely. Then he offered some advice for his fellow Young Republicans. If your pilot is a she and she looks 10 shades darker than someone from Sicily, just end it there. Scream the no word, Giunta wrote. So on and so forth. In a statement, Ort has called for members of the chat to resign. Quote, I was shocked and disgusted to learn about the racist, anti-Semitic and misogynistic comments attributed to members of the New York State Young Republicans, Ort said. This behaviour is indefensible and has no place in our party or anywhere in public life. So here you've got a Republican senator in the... a Republican politician, saying in New York, saying that these guys have been racist, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, and whatever, and they need to go. There's one of the people in that image that was one of the commenters, Bobby Walker. So later in the article, it says the private rhetoric isn't happening in a vacuum. It comes amid a widespread coarsening of the broader political discourse, and as incendiary and racially offensive tropes from the right become increasingly common in public debate. Now, this is the nub of the article, the nub of the discussion to be had here, which is, as I was saying, this is reflective of what people are thinking, what people are saying. The Overton window has expanded, and you can see in places like Twitter that this kind of rhetoric is all over the place. It is so... There's no moderation anymore because free speech absolutism, but free speech absolutism just leads to the very worst of conversations, and you can't get away from it. It's in your face. The algorithm throws into your feed all of these most disgusting things, and there's nothing that anyone seems to want to do about it, least of all Elon Musk. Last month, Trump posted an artificial intelligence generated video that showed House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in a sombrero beside Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, whose fabricated remarks were about trading free healthcare for immigrant votes, a false long-running GOP trope. The sombrero meme has been widely used to mock Democrats as the government shutdown wears on. In his 2024 campaign, Trump spread false reports of Haitian migrants eating pets, and at one of the rallies welcomed comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage and joked about black people carving watermelons on Halloween. Liz Houston, a White House spokesperson, rejected the idea that Trump's rhetoric had anything to do with the chat members' language. Quote, only an activist left-wing reporter would desperately try to tie President Trump into a story about a random group chat he has no affiliation with, while failing to mention the dangerous smears coming from Democrat politicians who have fantasized about murdering their opponents and called Republicans Nazis and fascists, which of course Donald Trump has done himself, by the way. She said no one has been subjected to more vicious rhetoric and violence than President Donald Trump and his supporters, which is absolute nonsense. Like, should I remind you of Melissa Hortman, who was killed as a state senator up in Minnesota, was it? I think no one has been subjected to more vicious rhetoric and violence. She was literally killed. So it's just nonsense. This idea that Donald Trump is untouchable, he's the greatest at everything, and no one's done any more than him for this, and no one's been more oppressed than he over in this particular domain is absolutely ridiculous. And the simple fact is that he has normalized this rhetoric. Not just him, but all of the anyone from Stephen Miller to Donald Trump and these rallies that he's been involved in. There's statements by Tony Hinchcliffe at the GOP rally in Madison Square Gardens during the campaign was horrific, and I completely contest what Liz Houston is saying here. Actually, the fish rots from the head. You need to set an example as the head of your party. And he stands up, like in Trump 1.0, when he stood up in a rally and ridiculed a disabled journalist by doing an impression of someone who's disabled. That is Donald Trump, and it is really sad. Anyway, lots more information about the sorts of things that are said, the people who have said them, so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah, here's another little interaction. Yeah, had some back and forth with the VC in Michigan. The current chair is a deer in the headlights. We have a call Wednesday. PG is at Junta again, says many agree. AD then says he did say my delegates I bring will vote for the most right-wing person, to which PG replies, great, I love Hitler. I mean, is he being super sarcastic? I mean, he's literally loving that the person has just stated that they are going to vote for the most right-wing person. So I don't really see that as a joke. I think that is just reflective. In another exchange, Dwyer, the Kansas chair, informs Junta that one of the Michigan Young Republicans promised him the group will vote for the most right-wing person to lead the national organization. Great, I love Hitler. Junta responded. Dwyer reacted with a smiley face. There are a few minority groups who are spared, and it goes into more detail in the article. It's all pretty offensive stuff. I'm going to join it later here to again talk about this idea of the expansion of the Overton window. Few minority groups are spared from the Young Republican groups chat. Their rhetoric, normalized at most points as dark humor, mirrors some popular conservative political commentators, podcasters, and comedians amid a national erosion of what's considered acceptable discourse. Junta, or national erosion of what's considered unacceptable. Junta's line on a darker skinned pilot, for example, echoes one used by slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk last year when he said, quote, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Kirk was discussing how diversity hiring invites unwholesome thinking. Walker also uses the moniker Eye Patch McCain, originally coined by conservative commentator Tucker Carlson, in an apparent reference to GOP Representative Dan Crenshaw. Crenshaw lost his eye while serving as a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan. Walker also makes a remark, I prefer my war heroes not captured, a repeat of a similar 2015 line from Donald Trump. Art Gibson, a professor at the University of Dayton who specializes in white racial extremism, surmised the Young Republicans in the chat were influenced by Trump's language, which he said is often hyperbolic and emotionally charged. Quote, Trump's persistent use of hostile, often inflammatory language that normalizes aggressive discourse in conservative circles can be incredibly influential on young operatives. You can see them quoting him, for example. This is me speaking. They quote Trump quite freely here. They quote Charlie Kirk in like taking what he's said and adapting it. So what these people say does have an effect. So influential on young operatives who are still trying to figure out what is that political discourse, Gibson said. So Gibson reviewed multiple excerpts from the chat provided by Politico. One was a late July message where Mosiman, the chair of Arizona Young Republicans, mused about how the group would win support for their preferred candidate by linking an opponent to white supremacist groups. But Mosiman then realized the plan could backfire. Kansas Young Republicans could end up becoming attracted to that opponent. Quote, can we get them to start releasing Nazi edits with her, like pro-Nazi and fascism propaganda, he asked the group. OMG, I love this plan. Rachel Hope, the Arizona Young Republican Events Chair, responded, quote, the only problem is we will lose the Kansas delegation, Mosselman said. Hope and the two Kansas Young Republicans in the chat reacted with a laughing face to the message. Hope did not respond to requests for comment. Mosselman declined to comment. Gibson said the Young Republicans' conversations reminded him of online discussions between members of neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. Quote, you say it once or twice, it's a joke, but you say it 251 times, it's no longer a joke, Gibson said. The more we repeat certain ideas, the more real they become to us. This is the mere exposure effect I've talked about before. The more credible anything you see repeated often enough becomes more credible and more attractive. So you can joke about something and maybe use Hitler in a joke, maybe be really all kind of bit taboo with your humor. Fair enough. But if you do that 251 times in a set of conversations, then it looks a bit more like a joke eventually. Weeks later, someone in the chat staying in a hotel asks its members to guess what room we're in. 1488. I've talked about 1488 before, which, like, you have to know that 1488 is a Nazi bit of numerology there. So 1488, Dwyer responds, white supremacists use the number 1488 because 14 is the number of words in the white supremacist slogan, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. H is the 8th letter in the alphabet, and 88 is often used as a shorthand for Heil Hitler, HH. In another conversation, you know, they're joking about and have the knowledge of this kind of white supremacist numerology. In another conversation in February, Junta talks approvingly about the Orange County Teenage Republican Organization in New York, which appears to be part of the network of national teenage Republicans, and how he was pleased with its young members' ideological bent. Quote, they support slavery and all that shit. Mega based. He said the term based is internet culture is used to express approval with an idea, often one that's bold or controversial. Based is a term used predominantly, almost entirely by the right. In a statement, Orange County GOP chair Courtney Canfield Green said the party was disappointed to learn its teen group was mentioned in its chat, so on and so forth. But I mean, the idea that they approvingly talk about how people in these chats support slavery and how that's really based, how that's really cool, is absolutely incredible. You know, it is racist. And then it goes on to talk about vicious words for enemies and all the slurs that are used in these conversations to talk about how horrible these people are and so on and so forth. And then, you know, as you can see here from this interaction, it's talking about how grape is epic, so on and so forth. So, yeah, just there's more explicit malice in some phrases too, especially when they turn their eye on opponents outside the chat, such as the leader of the rival Grow YR slate, Hayden Paget, who defeated Junta and was re-elected chairman of the Young Republican National Federation this summer. And it goes on to detail, you know, the offensive language used around this guy. And Minnesota faggots, he messaged, continuing Arkansas inbred cow effers, Nebraska revolts in our favor, block their bind and have a majority of their delegates, Maryland fat stinky Jew, Rhode Island traitorous C-words who I will eradicate from the face of this planet, so on and so forth. I mean, just there are some just really pretty egregious comments in this. Yeah, and these are the people that want to rule the country of the United States. These are the people that want to be representing in a representative democracy those people and making policy on behalf of all the people of the United States. But they seem to very much favor certain people in the United States. And then it goes on just more and more. There are more and more details of what is said in these chats, and it's just it's pretty incredible. Chris Murphy, who's a senator from Connecticut, said this is some vile stuff. And these aren't teenagers. Many Republican staffers, at least one, works for Trump. Epithets, and you know, those 251 epithets, as we heard. This is Governor Hochul talking about it.
Question? Politico reported on a group chat of a bunch of young Republicans. I'm I'm wondering your thoughts on that, and does this reflect, is it just some bad young apples in this chat, or do you think that there's a toxicity around the entire party?
Some bad apples. These are the future of the Republican Party. This was so vile. It is hard to find the words to put into context that these are people who are part of a political party, one of two major political parties, and they believe in gas chambers and rape and discrimination based on the color of people's skins. These are racist, sexist, disgusting remarks. And I would say this. We have a leader from the Republican Party in this state, the highest ranking individual, who in the backdrop of all this calls our candidate for mayor, one of our candidates for mayor, a jihadist and a terrorist, and then somehow says, oh, what they said, these young Republicans, was wrong. Like, look at what you say yourself. Look at your inflammatory words. And maybe they have an effect on these young people, many of whom you support and have supported you. And you ought to just do a little re-examination of how far this has gone, where this is normalized enough that thousands of texts are uncovered. This is not one person saying they love Hitler. This is a whole lot of people saying things that are so disgusting and so abhorrent that everybody from the president on down should condemn them. And there's got to be consequences. Kick them out of the party. Take away their official roles. Stop using them as campaign advisors. There needs to be consequences. This bullshit has to stop.
Governor, are you going to be holding a public event with Mom?
I couldn't have said that better myself, but it won't. What she asked for will not happen. It will be ignored, brushed under the carpet, excused away. But this is the state of political discourse in the United States at the moment. And this is the future of the Republican Party, it appears. Like, the most extreme positions appear to now be becoming more and more mainstream as that Overton window expands to encompass anything and everyone. Yeah, I think this is definitely reflective, and it is a sad day for American politics, I think.